Cambria lay awake in the dim hospital room, the heart monitor beeping softly beside her. She was still weak from surgery, drifting in and out of sleep, when she heard two nurses whispering near the curtain. They didn't know she was conscious. They whispered about a man, a husband, visiting late at night with another woman. The words felt like cold water poured over her. At first, she told herself it had to be someone else. Darren wouldn't do that. Not while she was lying here, barely able to move. But something felt wrong. Her hand felt lighter. She looked down and froze. Her wedding ring, gone. A faint memory surfaced of Darren taking it off to keep it safe. She hadn't thought much of it then, but now it made her chest tighten. Her pulse began to race. She reached for the hospital phone with trembling fingers. She wasn't supposed to be moving around yet, but she needed to know. She dialed into their joint account, praying she was just being paranoid. The automated voice spoke calmly, as if it wasn't about to destroy her world. Her available balance read, $14.62. $500,000, her father's inheritance, gone. Overnight. She couldn't breathe. Darren had access, but he would never, would he? Her mind replayed every small moment she had ignored. His late-night calls. His sudden kindness before she came to the hospital. His nervous smile the day she handed him her debit card just in case. It all clicked together in one painful instant. He hadn't just betrayed her heart. He had planned this. He had waited until she was too weak to question anything, too drugged to notice what he was doing. Lying in that hospital bed, Cambria realized the truth. Darren didn't think she would survive long enough to stop him. And he didn't think she had the strength to fight back. But he was wrong. Cambria remembered the first time she met Darren. She had been living in Milwaukee for a short work project when her apartment ceiling started leaking. Darren was the contractor sent to fix it. He was calm, polite, and had a way of speaking that made people feel safe around him. He didn't flirt, didn't push, didn't try too hard. He just showed up, did his work, and treated her with a steady kindness she hadn't felt in years. They started talking more. Coffee after work. Walks on weekends. He seemed like the kind of man who valued simple things, peace, stability, routine. Cambria liked that. She had grown up around chaos, constantly moving because of her father's business trips. With Darren, life felt quiet and predictable. After they married, their life stayed that way. A small house in a quiet neighborhood. Dinner at the same time every night. Sunday morning spent reading on the porch. Sometimes she thought it was almost too predictable, but she brushed the thought aside. People begged for peaceful marriages. She shouldn't question hers. Darren always insisted on managing their finances. He said she was too generous and might hand money to the wrong people. He laughed when he said it, but it stuck with her. Still, she trusted him. He handled the bills, the insurance, the savings. She let him, because nothing ever seemed wrong. Everything changed when her father died. The inheritance was more money than she ever imagined having. She wanted to take time and understand how to manage it, but Darren told her not to stress. "Let's keep everything in one place," he said, "it'll make life easier." She believed him. She didn't see the small signs, his sudden interest in her father's accounts, his late-night paperwork, the conversations he would end when she walked into the room. Looking back, she realized Darren hadn't been building a peaceful life. He had been preparing for the moment she would never expect him to strike. Cambria remembered those blurry hospital hours far too clearly. The medication kept pulling her under, but every time she drifted up toward consciousness, she caught pieces of voices around her. Most were nurses, soft and calm. But one voice stood out, sharper, impatient, familiar. Darren. She wasn't fully awake, but she knew his tone. It wasn't the gentle voice he used with her. This one was tight, angry. She heard him pacing near her bed, his shoes tapping against the floor. At first she thought he was stressed about her condition, but then another sound came through, his phone ringing. He answered quickly, almost too quickly. She couldn't open her eyes, but she could hear everything. Not now, he hissed. There was a pause, and then she heard a woman's voice crackling faintly through the phone. She didn't recognize the words, but she recognized the name he said next. Bessa, calm down. Her heart tried to react, but her body was too weak. She lay still, trapped inside her own head while his voice grew sharper. I told you, I can't leave yet, he said through clenched teeth. They're watching everything. Another pause. The woman said something that made him lower his voice even more. She's not going to die, he snapped quietly. They said she's stable enough. As soon as she's stable enough to leave, I'll handle the rest. Cambria's stomach twisted. She wasn't sure what he meant, but something in his tone made her feel cold. There was no fear in his voice. No worry for her. Only frustration, as if she were a problem he needed to get rid of. She remembered trying to move her fingers, trying to call his name, but the drugs pulled her under again before she could. Later, when she thought about those words, she understood the truth. Darren wasn't waiting for her recovery. He was waiting for the hospital to confirm she was alive. Alive enough so he wouldn't face charges. The thought hit her like a blow. He didn't care whether she healed. He only cared that. Late one evening, when the hallways were quiet and most patients were asleep, Cambria woke to the soft sound of someone adjusting her for. She opened her eyes and saw a nurse she hadn't met before. Her name tag read Marlo Jensen. She had a calm face, but her eyes looked worried. Marlo hesitated before speaking, as if choosing her words carefully. Cambria, can I ask you something? She whispered. Cambria nodded weakly. Are you safe at home? The question hit her harder than she expected. No one had ever asked her that. Not even during the worst moments of her marriage. She tried to answer, but Marlo continued gently, as if she already knew the truth. I shouldn't get involved, but I heard something earlier, she said, lowering her voice even more. Your husband was here. He wasn't alone. Cambria felt her chest tighten, but she stayed quiet, letting Marlo speak. I didn't see the woman's face, but I heard part of their conversation, Marlo said. They were standing in the hallway. He thought no one could hear them. Cambria waited, clinging to every word. He told her he needed to move his things out before you were discharged, Marlo said. He said he didn't want to be there when you came home. A cold wave spread through Cambria's body. It wasn't just the idea of him leaving, it was the fact he was planning it behind her back, already acting like she didn't exist. Marlo touched her arm gently. There was something else, she added. The way he spoke, it wasn't like a man dealing with guilt. It sounded like someone preparing for something. Something serious. Cambria felt tears sting her eyes. She already suspected betrayal, but hearing it from someone else made it real. Marlo leaned closer and said quietly. He's planning something. And I don't think it's just emotional. In that moment, Cambria understood the truth, Darren wasn't simply cheating. He was preparing for a life without her. And he wasn't afraid of hurting her to make it H. Cambria spent the next day pretending to be weaker than she really was. She let the nurses think she was too tired to talk. She let Darren believe she was confused from medication. She didn't ask questions or complain. She kept her face blank and her voice soft. Inside, though, her mind was working non-stop. She waited until the night shift began, when the halls grew quiet and Darren was nowhere near the building. With shaking fingers, she reached for the small phone kept in the drawer beside her bed. It took effort, but she managed to dial one number she remembered by heart, her father's estate lawyer, Gareth Pike. He answered on the second ring. His voice was steady, the same voice that had guided her father through every financial storm. Cambria? Are you all right? She kept her voice low. Gareth. I need help. Darren took the inheritance. All of it. There was a long silence, then a calm but firm tone. That money can't legally be moved without your permission. The withdrawal itself is a crime. Cambria closed her eyes, fighting tears. Can we get it back? Possibly, Gareth said. But we have a problem. Your husband has already started shifting the funds. If he moves it again, it will disappear into an account I won't be able to trace. He's acting fast. Her heartbeat quickened. She imagined Darren and Bessa celebrating, believing she was helpless in a hospital bed. What do I do? She whispered. Gareth didn't hesitate. We need proof. Don't confront him yet. Don't alert him. If he knows you found out, he'll move the money tonight. Cambria looked at the ceiling, breathing slowly. She realized she couldn't just act like the wounded wife anymore. She needed to be smarter than him. She needed to wait and collect every piece of evidence. I'm not reporting him, she said quietly. Not yet. She felt something shift inside her, something sharp, steady, and cold. I want to destroy him, she continued, and her too. I want to make sure they lose everything. Gareth's voice softened. Then we do this the careful way. Cambria hung up and placed the phone back in the drawer. She didn't feel broken anymore. She felt ready. Gareth arranged everything so Cambria could leave the hospital earlier than planned. The doctors weren't fully comfortable releasing her, but Gareth argued for home care, and Cambria played the part of a quiet, exhausted patient who just wanted her own bed. No one questioned it too much. She left in a wheelchair, fragile on the outside, but aware and alert on the inside. The ride home felt unreal. She stared out the window, wondering what she would walk into. She had prepared herself for the worst, but nothing could prepare her for the feeling of unlocking the front door and realizing the house didn't feel like hers anymore. The moment she stepped inside, she felt something was wrong. The air smelled different, stronger, sweeter, like a perfume she had never worn. She followed the scent up the stairs, her hand gripping the railing for support. Their bedroom stopped her cold. Half the closet was empty. Most of Darren's shirts and jackets were gone. The dresser drawer sat half open with missing clothes. A suitcase lay by the wall, unzipped, filled with more of his things. Another suitcase, smaller and pink, sat beside it. She had never seen it before. On the bed, a folded note waited for her. He had written only a few sentences, but each one felt like a slap. Cambria, I need space to think. Don't make this harder. I'll come back when things settle. There was no apology. No concern. No explanation. Just distance. She stood there, letting the emptiness wash over her, but she didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, she walked slowly to the corner of the room, where a small decorative vase sat on a shelf. She picked it up and felt underneath it. The tiny audio device she'd installed weeks ago before her surgery was still there, exactly where she left it. She checked behind the bedside lamp. Another device. Inside the vent near the closet. A third one. Every single recorder was untouched. The house felt unfamiliar, but these devices reminded her why she had installed them in the first place. Darren had been acting strange long before her surgery. Now, they held every conversation, every whisper, every truth spoken while she was lying in a hospital bed. And she knew the recordings would become the center of everything she planned next. Cambria waited until she was steady enough to sit on the edge of the bed before she reached for the small recorder hidden inside the vase. Her hands shook, not from weakness but from fear of what she was about to hear. She pressed play and let the truth spill into the quiet room. At first, all she heard were footsteps and drawers opening. Then Darren's voice filled the space, loud, irritated, nothing like the gentle tone he used with her. She won't survive without me, he said with a careless laugh. She can barely manage herself. Cambria felt the words cut into her, but she kept listening. Another voice joined him, lighter and sharper. Bessa. What did you expect? She's been dependent on you for years, she said. She'll sign anything you put in front of her. Darren laughed again, this time louder. Yeah, she always does. Cambria clenched the blanket in her fist. She wanted to stop the recording, but she forced herself to continue. Once the money clears, we're gone, Darren said. Arizona will be perfect. No one will bother us out there. Vesa sounded excited. 500,000. We'll be set for a long time. Cambria felt her throat tighten. Her father had worked his entire life to leave her that money. And Darren had spent only minutes taking it. The next part hit even harder. Vesa's voice softened into a cruel, mocking tone. She's too fragile to fight back, she said. Honestly, Darren, you're lucky. Most men have to work harder for this kind of payout. They both laughed. A deep, ugly laugh. Cambria pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from crying out, but the tears came anyway. Not warm tears of heartbreak, cold tears of realization. Every moment of their marriage replayed in her mind. The small comments, the controlling choices, the gentle pressure to hand over decisions. It all made sense now. She had never been loved. She had been used. And the man she trusted with her life was nothing more than a predator who picked the perfect victim, someone he thought would stay quiet. Cambria wiped her face and stopped the recording. Her grief was still there, but it wasn't soft anymore. It was sharp. It had purpose. And she knew she would never let them walk away with what belonged to her. Cambria called Gareth the moment she finished listening to the recordings. She didn't bother hiding the anger in her voice. She told him everything, every word Darren and Vesa said, every plan they had laid out. Gareth didn't sound surprised, only focused. He asked her to bring the devices to his office the next morning. From there, everything moved quickly. Gareth worked quietly, making sure no actions were visible to Darren. He froze the joint accounts before the money could be moved again. He pulled bank statements, copied every withdrawal, and began building a timeline of Darren's actions. Every detail was saved, every transaction explained. Cambria watched him work, feeling a strange calm settle over her. She wasn't powerless anymore. But Gareth reminded her this wasn't enough. They needed Darren's voice. They needed him to admit everything directly. And they needed Vesa involved too. That night, Cambria sat at her kitchen table with a notebook, planning every step. It was simple on the surface, but sharp underneath. She would call Darren and sound lost, confused, even apologetic. She would say she wanted to talk, that she didn't want to fight. She knew his ego wouldn't let him refuse. He would come, thinking she was still the same woman he could control. Once he came inside, she would guide the conversation carefully. She would ask about the woman. She would ask where he had been. She would ask what happened to the money. Darren loved to explain himself when he thought he had the upper hand. And Gareth would be in the next room, legally recording everything. The last part of the plan was harder but necessary. She needed Vesa there too. So she decided to send Darren a message that would guarantee it. I need you both here when I talk, she would tell him. No more secrets. It was cruel. It was calculated. And for the first time, Cambria felt like she had control over the ending of her own story. Cambria waited on the living room couch, wrapped in a blanket, looking weaker than she felt. The house was silent except for the faint sound of Gareth settling into the guest room with his recording equipment. He gave her a small nod before closing the door. Everything was ready. A few minutes later, the front door opened without hesitation. Darren stepped inside like he still owned the place. He wore clean clothes, fresh cologne, and that same controlled smile he used whenever he wanted to look innocent. Cambria, he said softly, as if he were the one who'd been hurt. I'm glad you reached out. She lowered her eyes, playing the part. We need to talk, about us. Darren relaxed immediately. He walked closer, hands in his pockets, confidence dripping from every step. I knew you'd want to work things out, he said. You're emotional right now. It's understandable. Before she could answer, another voice appeared in the doorway. Vesa. She walked in like she belonged there, her keys in her hand, her perfume filling the room. You said she wanted a real conversation, Vesa said to Darren, not even bothering to look at Cambria. Cambria didn't react. She expected it. She needed it. Darren flinched, realizing too late that he should have come alone. But Vesa was already sitting beside him, crossing her legs, waiting. Cambria kept her voice small, confused. I just want to understand. Why did you leave? What happened? What did I do wrong? Darren sighed, relieved she wasn't yelling. Nothing, Cambria. I just needed a new start. He glanced at Vesa. We needed a new start. It didn't take long. Within minutes, he was talking too much. His ego pushed him forward, certain she wouldn't fight him. Vesa nodded along, encouraging him. You took the money? Cambria asked softly. Darren didn't even think before answering. Yes. I moved it. You weren't going to use it anyway. Cambria swallowed. All of it? Yes, all of it, he snapped. It's mine as much as yours. I deserve it more than you ever did. Vesa smirked. We're better off using it than letting it rot in her account. Cambria lowered her head so they wouldn't see her expression. And you were leaving me? She whispered. Darren shrugged. I've been done for a long time. I just didn't want to walk away with nothing. You'll understand someday. Behind the guest room door, Gareth recorded every word, every admission, every insult, every piece of evidence they needed. Darren thought he was winning. He had no idea he had already lost. Cambria watched Darren's face fall the moment she spoke the words he never expected to hear. She didn't raise her voice, didn't cry, didn't even tremble. She simply told him she knew everything, the affair, the stolen money, the conversations he thought no one would ever hear. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The man who always acted strong suddenly looked small, like someone who had been pretending his whole life. Darren stepped toward her, hands shaking, his tone changing from anger to begging in seconds. He promised he could fix it, that he didn't mean any of it, that he only made mistakes because he was stressed. Cambria didn't move. She didn't comfort him. She just watched him fall apart in front of her. Vesa, who had been standing behind him, started blaming him as soon as she sensed danger. She pointed at Darren, calling him manipulative, saying he forced her into everything, acting as if she wasn't the one laughing in the recordings. Cambria let them talk over each other, both desperate to save themselves. Then she calmly explained what she had already done. Every account they touched was frozen. Every transfer was traced. The police already had the documents and recordings. The house they thought they could take from her was never Darren's to touch, it was protected under her father's trust, something she never mentioned because she never thought she needed to. Darren's knees weakened. He looked around the room like he was searching for a door that didn't exist. Vesa stared at the floor, knowing she had backed the wrong person and walked straight into the trap. Cambria didn't smile, didn't boast, didn't enjoy their collapse. She simply stood there, steady and silent, while the two people who tried to break her realized they had destroyed themselves instead. Darren was arrested within days. The authorities had everything they needed, bank statements, recordings, and a detailed timeline of every step he had taken to steal from Cambria. He was charged with financial fraud, and the news hit him harder than Cambria ever could. For the first time, he was completely powerless. Vesa wasn't spared. Investigators questioned her about her role in helping him move the money, and she quickly realized she could no longer spin the story to save herself. Her panic was clear, and for once, she couldn't manipulate anyone to her side. Meanwhile, Cambria moved forward quietly but firmly. She filed for divorce, submitting a full folder of evidence, everything Darren had tried to hide. The court proceedings were swift because the proof was undeniable. Gareth helped her secure every remaining asset, making sure nothing could be touched by Darren or Vesa. Every dollar, every property, every legal right was firmly under her name. Cambria also focused on herself. Months of hospital recovery had taken a toll, but she slowly regained her strength. She ate better, exercised carefully, and gave herself permission to heal emotionally. She still remembered the betrayal and the lies, but instead of letting them weigh her down, she used the experience to sharpen her resolve. Her friends and family noticed the change in her. She wasn't just stronger physically, she carried herself differently. Her confidence returned, steady and unwavering. She was no longer the trusting woman who had handed control to someone else. Cambria realized the most important victory wasn't just reclaiming her money or her home, it was reclaiming herself. She had survived betrayal, exposed the lies, and won back her life. For the first time in years, she felt free. And with that freedom came something even more powerful: control, clarity, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing she would never be taken advantage of again. Months later, Cambria finally moved into the coastal cottage her father had left her. The house smelled of salt air and old wood, a mix of comfort and memories she hadn't expected to feel. The walls were quiet, but for the first time in years, it felt like a place she could truly call home. She carried boxes up the narrow staircase, placing each one carefully. Some held clothes, some books, and some small items from her father's life. Each object reminded her of what she had lost and what she had fought to reclaim. Despite everything, she felt a strange peace settle in her chest. As she unpacked, she paused in the living room, looking out at the ocean. The waves crashed gently against the shore, steady and endless. Cambria whispered to herself, almost like speaking to the past. "You took my trust. You took my money. You tried to take my life. But you forgot, I learned survival from the man who built empires from dust." Her words weren't meant to reach anyone else. They were a promise to herself. She had been pushed to the edge, betrayed by the person she had loved most, but she had survived. Not only that, she had turned the tables completely. Cambria placed the last box down and stepped onto the porch. The wind tousled her hair, and she inhaled deeply. Every step she had taken, every careful plan, every moment of patience had led her here. She was stronger now. Wiser. Free. Looking out at the horizon, she realized she didn't just survive betrayal, she had outsmarted it. She had destroyed the people who tried to destroy her. And in the quiet, with the ocean at her feet, Cambria finally felt the calm satisfaction of a life rebuilt from ruins, one that no one could ever take from her again.